All right, we're going to get started here. Just waiting for the last guy to come in. Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Wu. I'm a senior solution architect with the Dynamics AX team. Welcome, everyone, to my session, Cloud-Based Integration with Dynamics AX. So third day in convergence. You guys holding up? Yeah? 2 more days to go. Still awake? I can't hear you! Yeah, I always wanted to do that. So, all right. Today we're going to talk about cloud-based integration. I have a Twitter handle there, so if you guys want to tweet your comments, please go ahead. Let's dive right in. Mobile first, cloud first. Wow. I'm sure this is the first time you guys heard it. So this is a slogan we've been using for quite a while now. I mean, mobile is not only a consumer space trend. At the enterprise level, a lot of big corporations are picking up on this trend, and some of the modern businesses are actually actively in transition to move some of their core business applications to the cloud. So this is no longer a trend anymore. We're actually living tomorrow today. So not only other businesses, of course, Microsoft ourselves, we're also in the process of adapting our product portfolio to the cloud. So I'm pretty sure most of you guys went to the keynote or the X7 breakout session, the general session, and saw a demo of X7. It's a nice, shiny new world of X7. Everything runs in the cloud. It's in the browser. Everything looks nice. That's great. But unfortunately, most of us are still stuck with 2012, R3. So does that mean we can't innovate anymore? Does that mean we cannot take advantage of some of the great capabilities Azure is offering us? No, we can still innovate, right? So this is what hopefully my session is going to explore today with you guys is that although we're still in 2012, that doesn't prevent us from using some of the great Azure capabilities to interact and expose some of the great business functionalities that you guys are already running on-prem out to your mobile devices. So agenda for the day is we're going to talk about just really briefly some of the existing patterns in Dynamics X for doing integration. And the second part is we're going to explore other great possibilities right now we can do with Azure, things like Service Bus, Azure Website, mobile services. And then also the third part of the presentation is going to be a brief introduction of what's coming next. What's the roadmap as far as cloud-based integration is concerned? So let's just get rid of the boring stuff real quick. So Dynamics X integration now, what can you do, right? Obviously, we have services in AIF. .NET Business Connector, always been there. Obviously, you can do .NET Interop. Since we're covering cloud-based integration today, we're going to be mainly focused on services and AIF. So this is just I'm pretty sure you guys have seen this before, architecture diagram of how AIF works, right? So we actually have the WCF runtime hosted in AOS, right? How many of you, just show of hands, have worked with AIF before? Awesome. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention one thing. This session is going to be a little bit of a technical session. So I did the same session during a technical conference where the audience is mainly developers. And I even got the comment of, oh, this is way too technical for me. So I apologize if I'm going too technical and too excited about showing you guys code and all the scenarios. But I'll try my best to make sense of this whole thing on the higher level as well. So AIF, let me just continue on this architecture. We have AOS running here. The way that one could interact with AX is through all these different clients, right? So we have our regular client-rich application that's doing RPC call in here. And then we also have things like internet clients that's reaching into AX through a WCF runtime, obviously hosted in IIS in this case because it's internet, into AX. Well, in this case, we're actually exposing port 80, right, in order to allow incoming traffic into our secured parameter, right? So in this case, existing pattern, we're opening port 80 on our firewall to allow traffic in. Obviously, we have different adapters provided for AIF, like a file adapter, MSMQ, and things like that. And in, I think, R3, we've introduced a new adapter called a service bus adapter. Today, we're not going to show any demo of that because it's old stuff. We've shown it multiple times in previous convergence and tech conferences. So I'm just going to briefly cover what it is and how does it work. So we've looked at the existing integration patterns and what are the arsenals at our disposal for us to perform integration with X. So if we're talking about businesses moving their SaaS, their applications into the cloud, interacting with other SaaS applications, right? So what are the challenges in the cloud? Obviously, a main challenge is, well, as a lot of the millennials come to the workforce, the computer to them is the phone in their pocket, right? So they'll be, guess what? When they're in the commuter train, when they have nothing to do, they're going to be using that mobile application you gave them. What does that mean? It means it's going to increase the traffic to your servers, right? It means a lot of things. How do you manage your identity, right? Do you manage your identity on-prem, in the cloud? Do you do two-tier security authentication? How does it work? How do you scale, right? I think you guys, all throughout these convergence sessions, multiple sessions has been emphasizing the great capabilities of Azure, being able to scale your business up and down. It's really critical, right? Because you can't just profile, you can't size your hardware infrastructure based on your peak volume, because that's definitely not very cost effective for you, right? So if this is something seasonal, you only have that amount of traffic in, first week of June, you don't want to buy all the hardware that you, to fit just the first week of June, because for the rest of the year, guess what? You're wasting your money. Obviously, traditionally, when we are looking at integration with X, or for that matter with any application, SOAP is heavily used, right? XML, SOAP. REST is a very cloud-friendly protocol, right? So how do we do REST with X? Right? We've never heard that before, at least with the current versions of X. And obviously, this is the speed of which we're innovating, making new features in Azure is just jaw-droppingly fast. And also to the developers, this is a double-sided sword, right? It's great, I have all these great capabilities I can use, but at the same time, damn, I need to learn all these new things, right? So how do you ramp up your developers quickly? How do you take advantage of all these great capabilities, websites, mobile services, BizTalk services, and how do you mash up all these things that have them work together? And how do you ramp up your developers in a cost-effective way? So in R3, like I was saying, we introduced the service bus adapter for you to expose some of your existing service endpoints, which are built on top of AIF, through service bus relay to the internet, so people can implement mobile devices to access those service points in a secured way. So how many of you have heard of the service bus adapter for AIF? How many of you have heard of service bus? Okay, let me just describe service bus briefly. Service bus is basically an Azure concept. It has mainly two usages. The first one, obviously, is the one we use it for, which is a relay. For cases like, you have some secure resources you have running on-premise, and you want to expose them in a secure fashion out to the internet. So service bus provides you a secure relay mechanism for you to expose something you're hosting on-prem out to the internet, which in this case is what we use service bus for. The second big role of service bus is acting as a a message brokering mechanism. So it hosts queues and topics where you can do your pub and sub type of integration scenario. That is not what we use Service Bus for, but later on I'll show you guys a demo actually will take advantage of some of the queuing capabilities and then bringing stuff into AX in batch. So if you want to do Service Bus adapter, expose services, AX services in a secure fashion out to the internet, what do you need to do? Obviously, you need to have AX, Service Bus, and ADFS. ADFS, anybody? Worked with ADS, heard of it? Okay. So ADFS is really critical here as far as authentication and security, passing tokens around. I have a good PowerPoint slides here to show you guys exactly how secure is. How you're talking about, okay, how to expose this in a secured fashion. Exactly how does security work underneath the hood if you're using Service Bus Relay, right? So basically, here's how it works. The main components involved are obviously you have your mobile clients, right? This is out on the internet. You have your X sitting over here, and then you have your ADFS. Is that ADFS? Oh, ADFS is not in the picture yet. There it is. So you have your ADFS sitting in the middle. Normally, this picture is not a best practices compliance topology because you're not supposed to expose your ADFS outside of your firewall. Normally, it actually sits inside of your firewall. What you do is you actually expose the ADFS proxy in your DMZ. But for purpose of this, we're just going to put it over here. So you have your ADFS here, and it actually has a trusting relation. Okay, this is how the token flows. It actually has a trusting relationship between your ADFS, which you have hosted on-prem, and your Windows Azure, Microsoft Azure. And you also have a trusting relationship between, obviously, your ADFS server and your Active Directory you have hosted on-prem, right? So for this overall authentication process to flow, the client first provides, obviously, you have to provide, say, if I'm an employee of Microsoft, I want to access some application Microsoft is hosting on-premise through Service Bus Relay. So I'm looking at this app on my phone. I'll give it my corporate credential, right? So Microsoft, Paul Wu, password. I'll give it to this ADFS endpoint. And then ADFS, because there's a trusting relationship between ADFS and Active Directory, so it will be able to authenticate Paul Wu as Paul Wu from Microsoft. So it'll give back a XAML token, which contains my credential, which basically identity of who Paul Wu is. So my client application is going to take that XAML token and pass it over to the access control service running in Azure. So why do we still need to pass that in? Well, that is because at this point, I've only authenticated myself against my own server, right? But in order to access the service endpoint, the relay endpoint I exposed in Azure, I still have to authenticate myself against the Azure endpoints, right? So I'm talking to the access control service here because there's a trusting relationship between the access control service and my ADFS. I'm getting a simple web token back from the ACS. And then we're going to use that token and pass it back to my client application. And then my client application is going to relay that token, use that token to access the Service Bus endpoint we have hosted in Azure. This is going to take, so we have two tokens at play here, right? The first token is the one we got back from ADFS that authenticates who I am in Microsoft. The second one is the one that ACS gave me for me to authenticate against the Service Bus endpoints. So obviously, the Service Bus relay endpoint is going to consume the second simple web token to say, OK, you're allowed to come in because you already authenticated yourself. And then it's going to forward my request to AX along with the XAML token that identifies who I am to the middle tier service. So we have a middle tier service running here in IIS to receive this token and do authentication to see, okay, you gave me a token, let me parse it. This is all based on Windows Identity Foundation. So I'm going to parse that XAML out, run through Windows Identity Foundation to see who this POU is he legit, and say, okay, he's legit because this token is signed by the same certificate that I trust, right? So, and then the middle tier WCF service is going to make a call into AIX on my behalf, right? So for those of you who have worked with AIF before, you know there's two ways of calling into AIF. The first way is, you know, you just make a call. The call will be made in the user who's actually running the WCF service. The second way is you actually can set the logging as user in the call context, so the calls actually can be made on your behalf. So it's like a personated call, right? In this case, obviously I passed in who I am, and then the middle tier service is going to make that call on my behalf. So the call is made into X, we get our response back, and it gets all the way really back to my mobile client. So we've seen. So this is how the high-level architecture works as far as how we expose X functionality through service bus, how the security authentication is done. So what do you need to do to set this up? So anybody actually have experience setting this up with our companion apps, or kudos to you? Because I know we've heard you loud and clear. It's not that easy to set up. But there's actually some resources out there, or white papers, blogs, that actually help you guys to set this up. But it is a little bit of a cumbersome process. So first of all, you have to configure Windows Azure, right? You have to create a service bus namespace so that you can use it for relay. This is how you create the service bus namespace. And you also have to configure ACS, which is the access control service we showed. That's where you set up the trust relationship between ACS and the ADFS you have running on-prem. Later on, I'll show you a live setup of what I have for my demo, so it'll give you guys a clearer picture. So this is how the existing service bus adapter that's already provided by you guys in AIF right now in R3 works. Right? So this is a one-time setup. You just have to set this up one time, create the custom authentication components, configure the service bus connection. Obviously, you have to deploy the port. And when you deploy the port, just make sure you pick the service bus adapter. And then that AIF endpoint will be automatically deployed to the cloud through service bus relay. So in order to develop a mobile client that actually uses this service, so what do you have to do to set this up? Obviously, your client application has to handle the security we were talking about, right? Getting the token from the ADFS, getting the secure web token from the access control service, pass that token, make the call to the service bus relay. So your application has to actually actively handle all that. So that's what's available to you now, out of the box. My demo machine just showed me an ugly face and dropped. Let's cross our fingers I can still access it. Okay, so next I'm going to go into some of the more fun stuff. So this is based on what we have right now. So the infrastructure, the main components topology here, you see it's pretty similar, where you still have your AX running here, your Active Directory here, ADFS outside your firewall here, providing identity. And then we have our middle tier WCF service here. So there's two ways of actually implementing this middle tier WCF service. One, obviously, is provided out of the box, right? It's SOAP-based. It exposes SOAP-based endpoints. So we provide that out of the box for you to use if you choose to use service bus adapter. But also, you can implement your own. And that's where things can get pretty interesting. And I'll show you some demo that actually take advantage of Some people ask, why you already provide one, why would I have another middle tier service on my own? So I'll show you guys a demo to prove why you would, the scenarios why you would want another middle tier service, custom middle tier service. So for this particular demo, I'm going to demo how to expose existing AIF service, which is creating customer, pretty simple. Expose that through the service bus relay, just like the same architecture we've shown, and have Azure website here actually deployed and access that publicly exposed service endpoint and create a customer. Whew, and my VM is back. Ooh, I was really scared for a second there. So let me switch to my VM. Okay. Let me duplicate my screen here real quick. It doesn't allow me to duplicate my screen. All right, let's give it one more try. Duplicate. All right. This is good. I'm lowering your expectation, so hopefully it's going to be all the way up from here. Okay, so this is the Azure website I have deployed. Let me just show you what I have on this machine. So this is the ADFS guy I was talking about. So basically, on this box I have a typical one box setup. I have X running on this machine. I have my ADFS server running on this machine, and some of the mobile clients I'm going to show is actually running on this machine as well. You can see here, remember I was telling you about the trust relationship between my on-prem ADFS and ACS? If you see here, the AX, ASA Mobile, ASP, this is actually a Azure Service Bus namespace, right? So that's how my on-prem ADFS server know where the ACS control is, right? Remember that picture I was showing you guys? So that's the ADFS setup. And the second part to it is, obviously I have deployed an Azure website that actually talks to my endpoints that I exposed on Azure. So I can show you my Azure setup real quick. So this is my service bus, AXSA Mobile. If you can see, I already deployed two endpoints here, customer and customer REST. And I have a customer connector service. This is the middle tier WCF service I was talking about that I have running on-prem, right? So this guy will listen to service bus relay and to see if there's any incoming messages, and then redirected appropriately. What else do I have running here? So if I were to stop this service, obviously those two endpoints will go away. But I don't want to show you that right now because I don't want a demo to go haywire. The identity, yes, this is the ACS identity provider. So basically this guy also knows where my ADFS server is, so that it gets the metadata out of my ADFS server to see how I can be authenticated. Of course, I have to authenticate again. Identity provider. If you see this URL here, that is the public DNS name for the machine I'm currently on, right? So the relationship is established between my ADFS and the ACS. Is everything making sense so far? Yeah? Okay, cool. All right, on to the fun stuff. So I have a Azure website here. As you can see, it's public. Test customer web app.azurewebsites.net/contacts. So if you're adventurous, you can go ahead and hit it. For those of you who has a laptop up, or phone, or for that matter. Before I get into this demo, is Mr. Eastern Bunny in the room? Okay, I'll get back to that. I know you guys are scratching, what is this guy talking about? It's crazy. But I'll tell you guys why I asked. So let me just go dive into the demo. I'm going to create a new customer here. Really simple, straightforward. I'm going to name it Paul. Woo. Give it an account number, initial, 001. Pick a customer group, let's pick 30, and hit create. So what this does is it's going to actually hit, it does the authentication, right? In this case, obviously, there's no authentication. You didn't see me putting my username and password because I've actually embedded it in my in the Azure website that I'm running to send those my default, in this case, administrator password and then username into the service endpoint so that I don't have to punch it in every time. Obviously, in the real world scenario, you will never do that, right? You always have an authentication screen where a user punch in their name and password, and then you relay that to ADFS and get the tokens and all that jazz. So it's doing that, get the tokens from ADFS, get the tokens from Azure, pass it over to the service bus relay, and then insert the customers into X. So let's see if that actually happened. So where's my customer? Okay, this is my customer page in X. Let's see if there's a Paul Wu guy. Oh, there it is. Paul Wu with account PW01 and 30. So anybody actually tried to create something? No? Okay. Yeah? Okay. Give me. Okay, let's see. If I refresh, I'll see. Okay, cool. We have some adventurous Peterson. Let's search Peterson. Yeah, there you are. We don't know each other, right? Just to make sure. It's not a setup. Yeah, so let's see if Mr. Eastern Bunny is here. He is. So the reason I brought that up is, so I did the similar demo during Tech Conference and used the same URL. So last night when I was checking, and I was checking my demo, I had a breakpoint set in my middle tier. So when you call in from my middle tier service relay, it'll hit my middle tier, right? I actually had a breakpoint stopped at the middle tier at the create customer call. And I was like, and then I saw Easter Bunny on my public Azure website. I was like, somebody's trying to create an Easter Bunny in my demo. That's how I caught it. So kudos to you, whoever created the Easter Bunny. So I thought that would be an interesting, fun story to share. So that's the first demo. So far, so good? Okay, cool. The second demo that I'm going to do, running a little short on time here. I'll speed up. So the second one is, I talk about REST, right? How do we do REST? In this particular case, I'm going to use a Fiddler. Anybody know Fiddler? Yeah, so Fiddler basically is a traffic monitoring tool that actually web developers actually use it a lot to monitor a web request and traffic and such. So I'm going to use a Fiddler to hit a RESTful endpoints exposed through AIF. So basically, the middle tier WCF service here introduces a shim, a RESTful shim on top of the existing AIF endpoints. And then the middle tier service is actually the one that exposes the RESTful interface. So let me just jump in that real quick. Because we have the ACS and stuff set up, so I have to actually go get a token. So if I do, let's look for Mr. Peterson. So PS01, let's, basically a simple find by scenario, right? So if I go to my composer, let me clear this up. And then put this here. So if I just execute it now, watch this here. Obviously, it's going to get it unauthorized, right? Because I don't have the right token to access ACS. So I actually have a simple app here that I can just run, get a token real quick. Okay, I'm just gonna copy and paste that token into Fiddler. So if I execute it now, let me clear here. I should be able to get this is totally a REST, right? There's no generating service proxies, there's no binding. Ooh, yes, 200. So as you can see here, I get a JSON message back. It's account number this guy, customer group 20, and my favorite guy here, Peterson Santos. So that's how you expose. So when we talk about, a lot of customers ask us, how do you expose, RESTful interfaces with X? Because that's where everybody's going, and obviously this architecture enables you to do that. This is my second demo, and the third demo is I apologize if I'm rushing through this because I actually got a lot of contents to cover. So who's worked with DXF before? So data import and export framework. So basically, it's a way to bring data into X in batch, right? So instead of the synchronous process, you wait until you create a whole bunch of customers and you bring them into X in batch. So in this case, I'm also using service bus here, but instead of using a relay, I'm using service bus as a message brokering system and actually using queues in service bus to queuing up my customers and send it in batch. So let's see that. What time do you guys have? I have 11:30, right? Because my screen is showing me I'm 53 minutes already, so I still have about 20 minutes, right? Okay, good. So I don't have to rush. Oh, phew. All right, the third one. So we've done the rest. I have here just a simple Windows Universal app here. Simple, standard out of the box demo app. I'm going to put my username in there, account, group, same old jazz, and instead of every single call goes into X through AIF, I'm actually queuing them up, posting them to the service bus in the queue, and then I have another process running on-prem that's grabbing those queues off of the service bus. So this case is super loosely coupled, right? Because it's a message-based architecture. My client doesn't know anything about what service I'm running in the backend, right? All it cares is I'm posting messages to the service bus. And my server, I don't care who is posting these messages, but I know this is the messages I'm consuming. So there's no binding or coupling between these two. That's what's great about message-based architecture, integration architecture. All right, enough talking. Let's create a whole bunch of polls. 220. No Eastern Bunny in this case because this app is actually running on my on my PC. Oh, there it is. Okay, let me just create a whole bunch more. Four's probably good. Okay, so let me show you what I got running on Azure. So like I was showing you guys, right? Service bus has two main roles. One is you can use it as a relay, which is the first two demo is based off of. In this particular case, we're actually using the queue capability from Service Bus. So let's go to the queues. You should have 4 messages here, right? Because I already posted 4 messages. So if I go to AX now, you won't see anything because I haven't run my server-side process that grabs those queue yet. So let's see. There should be only one polling here. So, okay. Let me run my server-side process. This is a process pretty simple, right? It just checks the service bus queue and see if there's any queue posted. If there is, it's going to grab all the items off of the queue and then just write it to an Excel file. In this case, the Excel file is created in here. If you check the timestamp, it's actually this timestamp. Well, you can't see it. So it's 8:30. This is my Seattle time. So in it, it'll have 4 customers. So then I also have a AX batch job that's running in the background. So if you watch closely, this file should be gone within a minute because I've set the recurrence of the batch job to run every minute. So what that batch job does is it's going to take that CSV file and going to run through the DXF processes and bring all these 4 customers. Oh, it's gone, right? You see that? And bring all those customers into AX as batch. So let's see if it's completed. So in this case, I actually have multiple folders set up. This is pretty standard DXF data import and export framework functionality, where if a message is completed, it'll be thrown in its completed folder. If it's failed, it's going to be thrown into the fail folder. But let's see if it actually got in. Should have 5 here. Hey, there it is. So this is how you bring in like an asynchronous batch process using Service Bus, right? Really loosely coupled. The client doesn't really know about the server. So this is pretty powerful functionality, right? Traditionally, people have been using a BizTalk server as their ESB. Obviously, most people have that running on-prem. Now we have BizTalk services in Azure as well, right? Some of the capabilities you can take advantage of. But this is using the Service Bus actually as your ESB, and then you're doing your message pub and sub kind of scenario on top of Azure Service Bus. And this is, again, I want to emphasize, this is all happening with R3, right? We don't need X7 to do cool stuff with Azure, right? There's a lot of capabilities we can take advantage of right now. So this is all the demos I have, which brings us to the third part of our presentation, which is the roadmap of Azure-based, cloud-based integration. So you guys still with me so far? Was the demo too much, or just okay? It's good? Good? Okay, all right. So how many of you have done an integration project? Of course, right? We all know all the ERP, all the big enterprises only run one application in their company, right? Right, so they all have, at least they have 2, right? You have a ERP, you have a CRM. And then obviously you have your BizTalk sitting in between doing the integrations, right? This is a traditional setup. We're talking about, this is one corporation, I have one business here, I have a ERP app, I have a CRM app, and I need to do integration, right? I have an on-premise BizTalk server that's doing the transformation, validation, your typical ETL, and all that jazz for you to do integration between your CRM and ERP. So, and if you use BizTalk server or any other kind of on-premise integration mechanism before, you would know this type of architecture is really tightly coupled, right? Let's say if you introduce a third application here, right? The third application would have to know your other 2 applications. If you introduce the fourth, it's when the things gets really hairy because you get 6 times the conversion going on here, right? So it's really tightly coupled. If the contract from CRM changes, you pretty much have to change the contract for the rest of your integration points to adapt that change. So in the world of mobile first and cloud first, not only do we have a fancier slide, so what's different about today, modern integration framework, right? So not only you have on-premise, you have applications running, right? Your ERM or maybe you have a CRM that's running on, in the cloud, right? And you have other SaaS applications, or tax calculation, or maybe your warehouse inventory applications is running on cloud, or ATP applications running on cloud, right? Whatever application you have running on cloud and on-premise, you have to perform integration amongst them. A modern integration framework is based on a modern protocol like REST, right? And messages are based on JSON. And there's many, many more touch points because enterprises tend to have, instead of hosting applications running on-premise, they're just, I'm going to pay for this service that's running in the cloud. I don't have to maintain it. I just use it and pay a monthly subscription fee, right? So there's many more subscription touch points, has loosely coupled connections. I think we believe the key to a successful modern integration project or implementation is for the developers, right? Developers. For the developers to have access to the integration, not only as a vertical, right? Traditionally, we had integration components as a vertical. Say, the BizTalk is a monolithic vertical app, right? This is another components you interact with, right? Instead of having that, having some of these orchestration capabilities, some of these transformation and mapping capabilities native to the developer experience, right? I've shown you how you interact with Azure website, how you interact with Service Bus, but and mobile services and such. But all these are great, powerful capabilities that Azure offers right now, but how do you bring them together, right? And we talk about the challenge of ramping up your developers in these new skill sets. If you have just dispersed technologies all over the place, how do you bring them together, right? So we believe integration is no longer a vertical. It should be core. It should be sitting in the core of your application framework. And let's look at like a B2B scenario, right? Traditionally, you have a fixed set of schema that you change between businesses, right? You have a lengthy partner onboarding experience, right? It takes days and weeks to establish contracts, onboarding partnership agreements and such. And also, you have to actively manage ports on your firewall, right? To expose endpoints for you to do these integrations. And again, we're going to go back to the scalability issue, right? If you're sizing your infrastructure based on peak volumes, it's not really very cost effective, right? And if you are hosting your own data center, obviously you will not be able to achieve the economy of scale of what we can offer in Azure, right? We have just tremendous amount of computing power hosted in Azure. And that gives you the capability of scale things up and down. So partnership in the cloud era. So what's different? Again, we're not talking about just one business to another business, right? We're talking about a collection of businesses talking to each other. And also the protocols. We don't have just EDI, Edifacts, S2, or X12. We have more cloud-friendlier protocols like JSON through HTTP-based resource APIs. And also the partner onboarding process needs to be quick, right? We don't want weeks and months of partner onboarding experience. We want minutes, hours, days. And also, again, the scalability issue, right? Azure gives us the great capability of scaling up my infrastructure based on my demand. So how do we put what we just talked about, the comparison we did between traditional integration, on-premise integration of among different apps I have running on-prem, and now I have not only apps on-prem, but apps in the cloud, and also B2B scenario. How do we put that in the context of enterprise application integration? So if you look at this architecture diagram here, have you guys seen this slide? No? OK. So the unofficial term I would use here is you can consider these as a microservice, right? So have everybody heard the microservice concept? Yeah? So microservice is just a architectural style. As the great Martin Flower put it, it's an architectural style where a single software application is implemented by a suite of small services, each running in their own process, and they communicate with each other through simple, lightweight mechanisms like HTTP-based APIs, resource APIs. And these small services or microservices is independently deployable, and then they are actually built around your business capabilities, right? So if we put that picture in the context of integration, normally in integration what happens, right? You have a source, and you have a pipeline where you do your transformation, validation, enrichment, and extraction, and then you have a target system where it's going, right? So in this future integration architecture, you will have a collection of triggers, connector triggers, which generates the data that I want to post, I want to have integrated from. And then I would have the whole transformation, validation, enrichment process as the mediation. I would also have that mediation as running as a microservice, right? And then again, we have connectors running at the other end where the data is going into. So for example, you have CRM integration with a ERP. You would have a CRM connector running here as a microservices, and you would implement other microservices or take advantage of some of the microservices we're going to publish here in Azure, do your typical integration things, orchestrations, and then the output of which will go into your destination connectors. And this whole orchestration, because in BizTalk, right, we used to use BizTalk to do the orchestration of business process. Now we have this workflow engine in Azure that's orchestrating this whole flow. So this is a typical, a typical architecture of I have my X running. It could be on-prem, could be in the cloud. I have CRM, same thing, could be on-prem, could be on the cloud. I would have these connector services created, and they would be hosted in Azure, and the workflow engine would be the one that's orchestrating where my data flows and how my data flows. And if you guys want to learn, and this is all we're talking about stuff that haven't yet been released, which will be released. The announcement of the entire application, new application platform, will be announced next week. That's why I can't talk about some of the detailed names and stuff. So if you guys want to know more of this great, exciting capabilities, we're offering integration-based capabilities, we're offering in the cloud. This is the virtual launch event. That's the QR code. If you punch it in your phone, it'll direct you right to this website. We're going to make announcements of all the great capabilities, the thing that's going to bring every technology in Azure, like mobile services, Azure websites, BizTalk services, everything together to reduce your implementation cost and ramp up your developers quickly. So that is definitely a great, exciting event that everybody should go to. So to sum it up, we've talked about existing patterns in Dynamics X, AIF-based patterns. We've explored possibilities of what we can do before we go to the shiny new world of X7, what we can do with X6 to take advantage of all the great, powerful capabilities Azure already offers us. And we also talked briefly about the future EAI architecture of taking advantage some of the new great capabilities that will be offered after next week in Azure. And hopefully you guys will go to that virtual launch event and learn more about it. All right, I'm going to open up the floor and for some questions. Yes? The question is, will the code samples I showed be available online? They're not yet, but I'm working on a series of blogs. If you follow me on Twitter, I'll tweet out all my blogs. Then you'll be able to see those demo codes, for sure. Any more questions? Yes?
You mentioned if you did create your own custom WCF services, could you somehow integrate that? You mentioned that you go to a demo or something about having custom services. Was your customer service supposed to be that, or what was that demo?
Are you referring to the first, second, or the third demo?
I thought you mentioned about having a custom service.
Yes. So the first, actually, all the demos I did are based on the custom middle tier WCF service that I wrote because I want to have just full control of exactly what that service does. Especially out of the box, we actually do ship a middle tier service that works with the service bus adapter. But if you want to have full control, and also if you want to do things like REST, expose REST endpoints, that's definitely something you need to write on your own.
So your service you wrote, that was not exposed to the AOS, that was exposed separately to .NET?
That is a Windows, the one that I have running, it's a Windows service that actually is the one that calls into AX through AIF, and it also listens to the service bus relay for incoming messages. Okay. Yep. We can chat more about it after this. Yes? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I don't think I catch that question.
So you've got SOAP-based lines and REST-based lines, right?
Yes.
What's your perspective on the industry movement towards REST adoption?
Yes, this is a very good question, man. So I don't know if you guys heard it. The question was, so what's the trend of integration scenarios? Because traditionally we've all been using SOAP. Now the cloud, it's all REST, HTTP resource-based APIs. What's the trend? There's actually a survey conducted by a really famous integration guy. His name is Richard Soroter. He actually talked to all his integration buddies, like the top integration implementers in the world. I think the number was around 70% of the current existing integration are still using SOAP, which is not surprising, right? Because we have all these applications or web services endpoints already implemented with SOAP. But the future is definitely a REST. And that's also where we're going in X7, right? As you guys seen yesterday. Any more questions?
Is it only WCF services? What about web API services?
Very good question. So the question is can this only be done through a WCF REST interface, or can this be done with a web APIs? I assume you're talking about the API controllers and the OData controllers that's available in web API. Yeah. So this particular prototype or demo I did is through WCF REST service. But I think there's nothing preventing you from using some of the OData controllers, right? Because it does nothing but providing a shim of interface. You just have to route in your OData controller, route the calls appropriately to the APIs that you're calling into X, right? If it's a get, route it to a find. If it's a create, route it to a, yeah. There's no reason why it wouldn't work. Yep. Any more questions? Peterson? We're good? Okay. All right. Thank you guys for coming. I have some resource pages here. Please fill out the feedback. Really appreciate it. Thank you.